Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today, we're diving into a case that has really shaken India.
Yeah.
It's the tragic death of a young doctor, a postgraduate trainee at RG Kar Medical College and Hospital in Kolkata.
Yes. It's a case that really raises some tough questions.
It does. It really does. And we've gotten so many messages and so much material about this.
Right.
It's clearly something that people want to understand better.
Right.
Go beyond those headlines.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So we're going to try to do that today, really examine what this case reveals about justice in India, especially for women, and think about what steps we can take
Yeah.
towards creating a safer environment for everyone.
It really forces us to confront some very difficult realities about power. Like, is there accountability?
Right.
And are the scales of justice balanced?
Yeah. And, this case, right from the beginning, there was just a cloud of suspicion.
Mm-hmm.
It's August of 2024. This young doctor, she's found murdered in the hospital. And the early reports, they were so confusing. It's almost like someone was trying to, hide something.
It did feel that way. And the public outcry was immediate.
It was.
And intense. There were huge protests, not only in Kolkata, but across West Bengal.
Yeah.
Junior doctors went on strike. They actually brought healthcare services to, a standstill.
To a halt.
It really wasn't just a local crime. It tapped into a deeper anger, distrust.
Yeah, a much larger issue, right?
Absolutely.
And it's interesting, because even in Kolkata, the rival football clubs, which are known for, really intense competition,
Intense.
they put their rivalry aside
It did.
and demanded justice for this doctor.
It really shows you how deeply this case resonated with people.
It does. It really does.
It became a focal point for, just the general anxieties about safety,
Yeah.
about accountability, and whether or not, powerful people can act with impunity. And even the Calcutta High Court, they felt like they had to transfer the case to the CBI because they were worried about evidence tampering.
Wow.
Witness intimidation. That, I think, speaks volumes.
It does. It really says something when the high court steps in like that.
It does.
So,
Yeah.
okay, the CBI steps in.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually, they file a charge sheet. But then, this is where it gets, really confusing for me.
Yes.
What happened?
So the CBI, they identified a man named Sanjay Roy.
Okay.
He was a civic police volunteer.
Yeah.
They said he was the main accused.
Okay.
But then Dr. Sandeep Ghosh, he was the former principal of the hospital, and a former police officer, Ahijit Mandal.
Yeah.
They were granted bail. And the reason why is because the CBI didn't file charges within a certain time period.
Oh, a technicality.
A technicality.
It's like you have this really high-profile case,
Yeah.
public pressure, the CBI comes in,
Yeah.
and then a technicality lets these key figures walk free.
Yeah, it's really upsetting, I think, to a lot of people. The victims' parents were, well, I can't imagine.
Devastated.
Yeah, they said, and this is a quote from the Times of India, they said, "Every day we fear this will turn into another case where the powerful escape punishment."
It's heartbreaking. And their words, they really get to the core issue here, right? Does influence really just overpower justice in India?
That's the question, isn't it?
It is.
Does money really buy you freedom?
Right.
And
it gets even more complicated because Dr. Ghosh was already out on bail
yeah,
for the rape and murder case, but he was still in custody for
right.
separate charges, financial irregularities.
Yeah, so it's possible we're looking at more than just, one terrible incident. It could be a whole pattern of wrongdoing.
It could be, yeah.
And this young doctor's death it's just one piece
Right.
of a much larger story.
Yeah, it feels like you said, peeling back the layers of an onion. And each layer is more disturbing.
It really is.
And the victim's parents, understandably, had absolutely no faith in the CBI's investigation.
Right.
And they decided to challenge it in the Calcutta High Court. They want a new investigation alleging that they were misled by the hospital
Wow.
about their daughter's death and that they were pressured into cremating her body very quickly. And their experience, sadly not unique. It highlights this ordeal that so many families go through.
Yeah.
Like this conflicting information, the pressure from authorities, the lack of transparency. It just adds to their trauma.
Absolutely. And then you add to that the fact that, and the High Court pointed this out, she was working alone at night in the hospital.
Yeah.
It's shocking that a medical institution wouldn't have better security.
Right.
Especially given how vulnerable women are. especially working late hours.
Absolutely. So it raises this really critical question, right? If even hospitals can't guarantee the safety of their staff,
Right.
particularly women, what does that say about women's safety in India in general? This case really puts a spotlight on that.
For sure. It highlights that reality, that difficult reality.
Yeah, and it's like just days after this horrible incident, another female doctor was threatened by a civic police volunteer.
It's scary.
It's really scary.
It really does paint a picture of this climate of fear, like the sense of impunity some individuals seem to have.
Exactly. And it brings us back to that question of accountability. How do we make sure that the systems that are supposed to protect people don't end up being used by the powerful to exploit others or avoid consequences? So tell us more about this civic police volunteer force. Like, what is their role? And why are there so many questions around them in this case?
Right. Well, the Civic Police Volunteer Force in West Bengal, it's kind of unique. They were, introduced back in 2011 to help the police.
Okay.
But they don't actually have, the authority to investigate or really get involved in legal matters.
No. But then how, if they're not actual police officers, how does someone like Sanjay Roy, the main suspect here, how does he have access to a police motorbike? And even lives in the police barracks.
Right.
That doesn't sound like a typical volunteer role.
No, and that's the concern, right? I mean, this case, it raises these really important questions about, how much power these volunteers have and how much access. And whether there's, anyone watching them.
To prevent abuses.
Exactly, yeah, to prevent abuses.
And it's not just Sanjay Roy. I mean, we've talked about these allegations against Dr. Ghosh. Like tampering with evidence, possible involvement in a cover-up, and now financial irregularities. I mean, it's like he was operating with this feeling that he's untouchable. Yeah,
this sense of impunity is like a recurring theme in this case.
It is.
It really makes you wonder, if for some people, wealth and influence, it's like a shield that protects them from consequences.
That's a chilling thought. It's disheartening, to think that maybe justice is just like a privilege.
Right. Is it a privilege or is it a right? Everybody should have equal access to justice.
Absolutely.
And this case has it sparked like a lot of soul searching in India. The protests, the media scrutiny. It really shows you that society is struggling with these basic questions of fairness and accountability.
Yeah, let's talk about the media's role in all of this, because it feels like they've been pretty relentless.
They have. They've played a really, really key role, I think, in keeping this case in the public eye. Articles in the Times of India, Frontline, The Week. I mean, they've gone beyond just reporting the news.
They have.
They've really dug deep into the allegations. And they've really given a voice to the victim's family and the protesters. So, they've done, I think, a great service.
They have. Especially that Times of India article. I mean, that one really, for me at least, captured the raw emotion of the parents.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, their words.
Their fear.
Their fear that justice might be denied. I mean, it resonated.
With a lot of people.
It did. It resonated.
In Frontline, I mean, they went even further, right? I mean, they uncovered details about the evidence tampering, the attack on the protesting women, possibly by people trying to destroy evidence, and just this overall climate of, like, intimidation. So really good in-depth reporting.
Yeah, and The Week really, I felt like they captured that energy of those protests.
They did, yeah.
That erupted after Dr. Ghosh and Mondal were granted bail.
Yeah.
It really showed the frustration, of just ordinary people who felt like the system had failed them.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, I think that the media coverage has been so important here.
It has been.
In making sure that this case doesn't just go away, that the demands for justice aren't forgotten.
Yeah, it's a reminder that a free press is essential to hold power accountable.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just the media. I mean, the junior doctors who were protesting.
Yeah.
They didn't just express their anger. They came up with some pretty specific demands for change.
They did. Their 5-point charter, it was really like a call for change.
It was, yeah.
They wanted better security in hospitals. They wanted stricter punishments for crimes against, healthcare workers. And really importantly, they wanted a thorough and transparent investigation into this incident.
Of course.
They wanted to make sure this never happened again.
Absolutely. And it's inspiring, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
To see them using their platform to advocate for this kind of real change.
Absolutely.
And then it wasn't just them. I mean, even the Supreme Court stepped in.
I know. The Supreme Court, they took suo motu cognizance of this case.
Yeah.
Which means, they decided to intervene on their own.
On their own. Wow.
Without a formal petition. Yeah, they established a national task force.
Wow.
To come up with guidelines for protecting healthcare professionals.
Wow, that's amazing.
And they also, they directly questioned the West Bengal government about how slow they were moving in implementing these security measures they had promised.
Wow, so having the highest court in the land take notice like that, I mean, that really sends a message.
It does. It shows this case, it goes way beyond just this one hospital or this one city.
Absolutely.
It's really a matter of national importance, and it shows this urgent need, like we've been saying, for systemic change to make sure that healthcare workers are safe. They're essential.
Absolutely.
They're the fabric of our society. We need to protect them.
We do.
Yeah.
And we can't ignore the elephant in the room. These allegations against Dr. Ghosh, specifically those from his time in Hong Kong back in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
How is someone accused of such serious misconduct,
I know,
molesting a male nursing student, allowed to hold a position of authority in a medical institution?
It's baffling, isn't it? It suggests there's a breakdown at so many levels.
Right.
Background checks, reporting mechanisms, accountability structures. If someone with a history like that can become principal,
right,
what does that say about the system's ability to protect people?
It raises this really fundamental question. Are medical institutions doing enough to create these safe and accountable environments?
Clearly not. Clearly there needs to be a major overhaul.
Yeah.
We need better ways to report misconduct, thorough investigations, zero tolerance for any kind of abuse,
right,
harassment, exploitation. It's not just about punishing people after the fact.
Right.
It's about stopping it from happening in the first place.
It's about creating a culture of respect, transparency, accountability, where people feel safe speaking up.
Absolutely.
Without fear.
Without fear, yes.
So this case has really exposed the cracks in the system.
It has.
The vulnerabilities
that
allow people like Dr. Ghosh to operate with impunity.
For so long.
For so long, yeah. And it's a reminder that justice, it's not a destination.
Right.
It's a constant struggle.
It's an ongoing battle.
It is. And it's a battle that requires, all of us to be involved.
A collective effort.
A collective effort, yes. It feels like this case has been a real wake-up call for a lot of people.
Yeah.
We've seen protests, media scrutiny, the Supreme Court stepping in.
Yeah.
So clearly there's this growing awareness, right, of the problem of violence against women. But is that enough? What more needs to change?
Well, awareness is really important.
Yeah.
But it has to lead to action.
Right.
Right. It can't just be like, oh, we're aware of the problem. We have to actually do something about it. And I think we need, a multi-pronged approach that gets to the root of the problem.
So, what specifically, we've talked about reforming institutions, but what about just, societal attitudes?
Wow.
Can you really change those with laws?
Yeah, that's the tough part, right?
Yeah.
Changing attitudes is a long process.
Yeah.
But it's essential. We need to start early, educating young people.
Yeah.
About gender equality, about respect in relationships, about consent. Creating a culture where violence against women is just not tolerated.
Right. It's just unacceptable.
Unacceptable.
Period.
Exactly.
Okay, so education is key.
Yes.
Long term. But what about right now? What can we do, in the immediate future to make a difference?
Okay, so in the short term, we need to, strengthen laws. But it's not just about having laws, it's about enforcing them.
Okay.
Right. Because a lot of times we see laws, but the systems to enforce them are really weak.
So it's about having a system that actually works.
That works, yeah.
Yeah, what about the role of law enforcement in this?
Right.
Because we saw in this case, the initial response from the local police was, questionable at best.
Yeah, police reform is really important.
Okay.
We need to, train police better.
Okay. On how to handle sensitive cases like this.
Right, sexual assault.
Exactly. And there needs to be more transparency in investigations.
Right.
And real accountability when police do something wrong. There needs to be a real change in how these cases are treated
From the very beginning.
from the very beginning.
Wow. So it sounds like what we need is, a huge overhaul, not just little changes here and there.
It is a big task.
It is a massive undertaking. Where do we even start?
Well, it starts with admitting there's a problem
Right. Okay.
and then making a commitment to fixing it.
Okay.
And this can't just be like a women's issue. This has to be a national priority.
It has to be. So what can everyday people do? Besides staying informed,
Right.
supporting organizations that are doing this work.
Never underestimate the power of your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Hold your elected officials accountable. Demand better from your institutions. And, call people out when you see bias and prejudice.
Speak up.
Speak up, yeah. Even when it's hard.
Even when you think it won't make a difference.
Right.
Because every voice matters.
It does.
And don't forget about, empathy and support. Stand with survivors. Believe them. Create a space where they feel safe coming forward.
Right, where they feel safe sharing their stories. It's about creating a culture where survivors aren't, blamed or shamed,
Mm-hmm.
but instead they're supported.
Right. Empowered.
Yeah, empowered to seek justice. So this case, it's brought up a lot of really difficult questions,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also started this crucial conversation.
And that conversation needs to keep going, long after the headlines fade. This is about fighting for a future where everyone, no matter their gender, can live without fear, without violence,
Yeah,
and where justice isn't a privilege, it's a right.
absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive. It's been a tough topic, but so important. And as always, we encourage you to keep learning, keep asking questions, and keep pushing for a better world.